Nalani's fingers froze on the crystal paperweight she'd been dusting. Her eyes had accidentally landed on the documents spread across Kang Min-Jun's massive desk, and what she saw there made her stomach drop like a stone into cold water. The late afternoon light streaming through the penthouse windows seemed to dim as she recognized the legal trap hidden in the elegant paragraphs, words that had once destroyed her life. Her pulse hammered in her throat. She needed to look away, finish her work, vanish back into the shadows where she'd learned to exist. For 4 months, she'd perfected invisibility at the Kang estate, moving like a ghost through rooms where million-dollar deals were discussed, where dangerous men spoke in hushed Korean and English about territories and power. She'd trained herself to see nothing, hear nothing, be nothing. But this document, this contract with its poisoned clauses hidden like landmines beneath professional language, it was calling to her with a siren song of warning. Words that had ruined her life once before now sat innocently on expensive paper, ready to destroy someone else. Her heart screamed at her to stay silent, to protect the fragile new life she'd built from the ashes of her old one. "This can't be happening," she whispered to the empty room, her breath shaky. The door opened behind her. Nalani jumped, her cleaning cloth tumbling from her hands, as Kang Min-Jun himself walked in, 6'2" of lethal elegance in a midnight blue suit that probably cost more than she'd earned in the past year. His sharp eyes, the kind that had built an empire most people whispered about but never challenged, swept across the room and landed on her with cool indifference. "You are still here?" His accent was slight, his English perfect and cold as winter rain. I was just finishing, Mr. Kang." Nalani bent quickly to retrieve her cloth, praying he hadn't noticed her staring at his private documents, praying her face didn't reveal the alarm bells clanging in her mind like a 5-alarm fire. But as she straightened up, their eyes met and something broke inside her. Years of keeping her head down, of swallowing her knowledge and her pain, couldn't silence the words that burst from her lips. "Sir, excuse me, but this clause, it's a trap." Kang Min-Jun's expression, polite and dismissive, the face he showed people he considered beneath notice, froze. Then slowly, like ice cracking, it shifted into something far more dangerous. "What did you just say?" What secret was Nalani hiding? Why did a simple cleaning woman recognize legal language that most attorneys would miss? And what would happen now that she'd spoken words that could change everything? The answers would rock Kang Min-Jun's world and expose a system of corruption he never knew existed. But first, Nalani had to survive what came next. 4 months earlier, Nalani had stood at the entrance of the Kang estate with $23 in her wallet and desperation clawing at her chest. The building rose before her like a fortress of glass and steel and money, everything she'd once dreamed of having, everything she'd lost. She clutched her carefully edited resume showing only her recent history: motel housekeeper, office building cleaner, overnight diner waitress. Everything else, her real past, had been carefully buried. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, had studied her with eyes that had seen too many desperate women to count. "You understand discretion?" "Yes, ma'am." "You understand that what you see here, what you hear here, stays here?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you understand that Mr. Kang values staff who are invisible. No questions, no curiosity, no involvement." "I understand completely." Nalani had met Mrs. Kim's gaze with quiet dignity. "I need this job. I won't be any trouble." And she hadn't been. For 4 months, Nalani had been the perfect invisible employee. She arrived at 5:30 in the morning, cleaned her assigned areas, ate lunch in the staff kitchen, and left by 3 in the afternoon. She never lingered when Min-Jun held meetings with men in expensive suits and cold eyes. She never glanced at the documents covering his desk. She never reacted when she overheard conversations about shipments, investments, and deals that lived in gray areas of the law. She trained herself to see nothing, hear nothing, be nothing. But this document, this contract with its poisoned clauses hidden like landmines beneath professional language, it was calling to her with a siren song of warning. Words that had ruined her life once before now sat innocently on expensive paper, ready to destroy someone else. Her heart screamed at her to stay silent, to protect the fragile new life she'd built from the ashes of her old one. Min-Jun's dark eyes bored into her, all traces of casual indifference gone. In 3 swift strides, he crossed the room and stood before her, so close she could smell his cologne, something sophisticated and dangerous all at once. "You recognized something in this contract?" It wasn't a question. His voice had dropped to a lethal whisper. "Explain. Now." Nalani's mouth went dry. Every survival instinct screamed her to lie, to backtrack, to run. But another part of her, the part that had spent 3 years rebuilding herself from nothing, refused to bow. "Section 9, subsection D," she said quietly, forcing her voice to stay steady. "The clause about dispute resolution. It looks standard, but it's not. The arbitration requirement binds only you, not Choi Dae-jung. The language is deliberately vague. Any party may seek versus all parties shall be bound by. It means Choi can sue you in court, but you can only go to arbitration, with an arbitrator he selects. You sign this, you're handing him a loaded weapon." The silence that followed felt like drowning. Min-Jun stared at her, truly looked at her for the first time since she'd started working for him. His jaw tightened. Something shifted in his expression, like a predator recognizing intelligence and what he'd assumed was prey. "Who are you?" he asked slowly. In that moment, as Min-Jun's world tilted on its axis, Nalani knew there was no going back. The secret she'd buried was clawing its way to the surface, but revealing her past meant exposing the injustice that had destroyed her and the powerful people who wanted to keep her silent. Would Min-Jun believe her, or would he see her as just another threat to eliminate? The truth was about to explode, and nothing would be the same after. "I need you to sit down," Min-Jun said, his voice carrying that tone of absolute authority that made even his most dangerous associates obey without question. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Nalani didn't move. "I should go. I shouldn't have said anything." "Sit down." Not a request. Her legs obeyed before her mind could protest. She sank into the chair, the same chair where she'd seen Min-Jun conduct negotiations worth millions, where powerful men had sat and tried to hide their nervousness. Now she sat there in her simple black uniform, her braids pulled back in a practical style, facing a man who could destroy what little life she'd rebuilt. Min-Jun moved around the desk, picked up the contract, and set it in front of her. Then he pulled up a second chair, not behind his desk in the position of power, but beside her, close enough that she could see the sharp intelligence in his eyes. "Read it," he commanded. "All of it. Tell me what else I'm missing." "Mr. Kang." Min-Jun, he leaned back, studying her with unnerving intensity. "And you're going to tell me your real name, your real story. But first, you're going to tell me every single trap in this contract. Because if you're right about Section 9, there's a reason you know it, and I'm going to find out what that reason is." Nalani's hands shook as she pulled the contract closer. Her mind was already analyzing, dissecting, seeing patterns that most people, even most lawyers, would miss. It was like muscle memory, this ability to read between the lines of legal language. The skill that had once been her greatest asset, then became her greatest curse. Section 3, the payment terms, she began, her voice growing steadier as she slipped back into the professional persona she'd buried. "The initial payment of $8 million is clear, but the additional compensation, based on performance metrics to be mutually agreed upon, that's a time bomb. There's no definition of what those metrics are, who defines them, or what happens if you disagree. Choi could claim you haven't met metrics you never agreed to, withhold payment, and sue you for breach when you can't deliver more." Min-Jun's expression darkened. "Continue. Section 11, the confidentiality clause, it's one-sided. You're bound to absolute silence about this deal and all related business. He's bound to reasonable discretion. That's not enforceable against him, but it's a hammer he can use against you. If anything about this deal goes public, you're automatically in breach. He can leak everything and face no consequences."
keep going. For the next 30 minutes, Nalani dissected the contract piece by piece. She showed him the hidden escape clauses that gave Choi complete flexibility while locking Min-Jun into ironclad obligations. She pointed out the liability provisions that shifted all risk onto Min-Jun's shoulders. She explained how the indemnification language would make Min-Jun responsible for any legal troubles that arose, even troubles Choi himself caused. By the time she finished, Min-Jun's face had gone from dark to thunderous. "This entire contract," he said slowly, "is designed to destroy me." Yes. Nalani met his eyes. Whoever drafted this is very, very good. The language looks standard on the surface, most attorneys would approve it, but underneath, it's a masterclass in legal manipulation. Sign this, and Choi Dae-jung owns you. And when he's done using you, he can destroy you without breaking a single law. Min-Jun stood abruptly, pacing to the window, his hands clenched at his sides. The only visible sign of rage in a man who'd built an empire on controlling his emotions. "I've done business with Choi for 6 years. I trusted him. This deal, this partnership was supposed to expand my territory, legitimize some of my operations. My attorneys reviewed this contract, 4 of them. They all said it was fine. They're either incompetent or paid off." The words came out flat, certain. Min-Jun turned sharply. "You sound very sure about that." "I am, because this has happened to you before."
Nalani felt the walls closing in, felt the weight of the past she tried to escape pressing down on her chest. But there was no hiding now, no going back to being invisible. "Yes," she whispered, "this exact same kind of contract happened to me, and it destroyed my entire life." The words hung in the air between them, a confession, a warning, a shared wound. Min-Jun, a man who trusted no one, suddenly saw Nalani not as a servant, but as someone who'd been broken by the same kind of betrayal he'd almost walked into. What he didn't know yet was that the same powerful firm that had tried to trap him had already destroyed her. And they'd do it again if they discovered she was still in the game, still fighting. But Min-Jun didn't let anyone hurt what was his, and Nalani was about to become exactly that. "Tell me everything." Min-Jun returned to the chair beside her, this time even closer, his presence intimidating, powerful, but somehow not threatening, wrapped around Nalani like a command she couldn't refuse. She took a shaky breath. The story she'd never told anyone, the truth she'd buried under 3 years of silence, clawed its way up her throat. "My name is Nalani Brooks. 5 years ago, I graduated at the top of my class from Columbia Law. I got hired at Sterling Harrison and Partners, one of the biggest corporate law firms in New York. It was my dream job. I worked 90-hour weeks, did everything perfectly, and after 18 months, I made junior attorney." Min-Jun listened without interrupting, his dark eyes never leaving her face. 3 years ago, I was assigned to a major case. A client wanted to acquire a rival company, hostile takeover. I was tasked with reviewing the acquisition contracts. And I found something. Hidden clauses, just like in your contract. Brilliant, nearly invisible legal traps that would have destroyed the target company and exposed our client to massive liability. "You reported it?" "I reported it to my supervising partner, Marcus Sterling himself. I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting the firm, protecting the client. I was so naive. What did Sterling do? He thanked me, told me to rewrite the contracts correctly. I did. I worked 4 days straight to fix every trap, every hidden clause. I submitted the clean version." Nalani's hands clenched in her lap. 3 weeks later, I was called into a meeting. Sterling, Harrison, and 3 senior partners, they accused me of falsifying documents. They said the original contracts, the ones with all the traps, were my work, that I'd tried to sabotage the deal. Min-Jun's jaw tightened. "They framed you perfectly. They had emails with my name on them, documents with my electronic signature, everything.
I tried to defend myself, but I was one junior attorney against the entire leadership of the firm. They said I'd had a breakdown from stress, that I was unstable. They offered me a choice: either resign quietly, and they wouldn't report me to the Bar Association, or fight, and they'd destroy my career and reputation completely. You resigned. I had law school debt, no savings, no family to help me. My parents passed when I was in high school. I couldn't afford to fight them. Tears burned in Nalani's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I signed their severance agreement, which included ironclad NDAs and non-disparagement clauses. They gave me 2 months' salary and a reference that said I'd voluntarily resigned to pursue other opportunities. And then they blacklisted me. Blacklisted. I applied to 62 other law firms. None would hire me. I finally learned through a friend that Sterling Harrison had quietly spread rumors that I was unstable, unreliable, not fit for serious legal work. I couldn't get a job as a paralegal, couldn't get a job as a legal secretary. I couldn't even get a job at a restaurant near the courthouse. They all knew someone at the firm. Min-Jun's hands had curled into fists. So you became invisible. I changed my resume, left off my law degree, my bar admission, everything that connected me to that world. I became just another woman working service jobs to survive. And for 3 years, I told myself that was enough, that I'd just exist in the shadows and try to forget. Until I saw your contract. Until I saw the exact same poisoned language. Those clauses in your contract, they're Marcus Sterling's signature work. I'd recognize his style anywhere. He's the one who drafted the original trap contracts at the firm, the ones they framed me for. And I'm betting he's the one who drafted your contract with Choi. The silence that followed was deafening. Min-Jun stood slowly, moved back to his desk, and picked up his phone. "Taeyang," he said into it, "I need the name of the law firm that drafted the Choi contract. Now." A pause. "Sterling Harrison and Partners out of New York." "I see."
Min-Jun's eyes locked on Nalani, and what she saw there made her breath catch. It was rage, yes, cold and controlled and absolutely deadly. But underneath it was something else, something that looked almost like respect. "Taeyang," Min-Jun said, still watching her, "canceled the Choi meeting. Tell him I need another 2 weeks to review the contract. And get me everything, and I mean everything, on Sterling Harrison and Partners and a former attorney named Nalani Brooks." He ended the call. "You saved my life today," he said quietly, "or at least saved my empire. A debt like that doesn't go unpaid in my world." "I don't want payment," Nalani whispered. "I just couldn't watch them do to someone else what they did to me." "That's unfortunate." Min-Jun moved around the desk, leaning against it in front of her. "Because I always pay my debts. And right now, Nalani Brooks, I owe you everything. Which means you're about to get 2 things: justice and protection, whether you want them or not." In that moment, everything changed. Min-Jun, a man who ruled Chicago's underworld with an iron fist, had just declared war on one of the city's most powerful law firms. But Sterling and Harrison had destroyed countless people who dared oppose them. They had connections, money, and absolutely no conscience. The moment they discovered Nalani was still in Chicago, still alive, still capable of exposing their crimes, they'd come for her with everything they had. And Min-Jun's protection might be the only thing standing between Nalani and complete annihilation. But protection from a Korean mob boss came with a price all its own. The next 72 hours passed in a blur that Nalani would remember for the rest of her life. Min-Jun didn't just investigate Sterling and Harrison. He dissected them. His people worked around the clock, and what they found made Nalani's destruction look like child's play. Sterling and Harrison had been running the same scheme for years, creating deliberately flawed contracts for powerful clients, then using those flaws to blackmail, control, or destroy anyone who became inconvenient. They'd ruined competitors, silenced whistleblowers, and made millions in the process. And Nalani hadn't been their only victim. There are at least 9 others, Taeyang said, Min-Jun second in command, during a meeting in the study. Nalani sat in the corner, still wearing her uniform because she hadn't been home. Min-Jun had assigned 3 guards to watch her apartment and insisted she stay at the estate until this is handled, whatever that meant. 9 attorneys, all women, all brilliant, all destroyed by accusations of misconduct or instability. All of them signed NDAs. All of them disappeared from the legal profession. Where are they now? Min-Jun asked. 3 are working retail, 2 are bartenders, 3 left the state entirely. We're tracking them down. 1, Taeyang's expression darkened. 1 took her own life 8 months after leaving the firm. Nalani felt the blood drain from her face. She'd almost been that last one. There had been nights, so many nights, when the weight of injustice and loss had felt crushing enough to end it all. Min-Jun's eyes found hers across the room. What she saw there wasn't pity. It was understanding and rage. Sterling and Harrison are going to pay for every single life they destroyed. But we need to be smart about this. They're connected to judges, politicians, other firms. A direct attack would get messy. So what do you propose? Taeyang asked. We give them exactly what they gave Nalani, a perfect trap they won't see until it's too late. Min-Jun turned to her. And we're going to need a brilliant attorney to design it. Nalani, I need you to come work for me. Not as a housekeeper, as my legal counsel. I can't practice law. I'm technically still licensed, but after what they did to my reputation, you'll be working for me, not applying to law firms. My organization needs someone who can review contracts, identify traps, and protect my interests. Someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands what it means to be destroyed by people who were supposed to have your back. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would you do this for me? You don't know me. You're not just anything. Min-Jun crossed the room, stopping directly in front of her. You're brilliant, courageous, and you've survived something that would have broken most people. You saw injustice and spoke up even when it could have cost you everything again. That's not weakness, Nalani. That's strength. And I want that strength on my side. Tears finally spilled down Nalani's cheeks. 3 years of invisible pain, of swallowing rage and shame, of believing she was worthless, all of it cracked open at his words. They'll come after me, she whispered. When they find out I'm helping you, when they realize I can expose them, let them try. Min-Jun's voice dropped to that lethal whisper. I've built an empire by protecting what's mine, and you, Nalani Rose Brooks, are now under my protection. Anyone who touches you answers to me.
Something shifted in that moment, something that had nothing to do with employment or legal strategy. Nalani looked up at Min-Jun, truly looked at him, and saw past the mob boss, past the dangerous reputation, past the power and wealth. She saw a man who understood loyalty, who valued intelligence and courage, who was offering her something no one else ever had, the chance to fight back. Okay, she said softly. Okay, I'll do it. Min-Jun smiled. A real smile this time, not the polite mask he showed the world. Good, because I've already had your office prepared. And tomorrow we're going to start building the most beautiful legal trap Sterling, Harrison, and Partners has ever seen. From invisible maid to trusted counsel, Nalani's transformation had begun. But as she stepped back into the world of law, this time with the full power of Min-Jun's empire behind her, Sterling, Harrison, and Partners would soon discover they'd made a fatal mistake 3 years ago. They hadn't destroyed Nalani Brooks. They'd forged her into something far more dangerous. And now, with loyalty, protection, and a brilliant plan forming between her and Min-Jun, justice was finally coming. But revenge was only the beginning of what would grow between them. 4 months later, Nalani sat in Min-Jun's study, but this time behind her own desk, surrounded by law books, 4 computer monitors, and a stack of contracts that would have made her former firm weep with envy. Her braids, no longer pulled back in a severe style, fell in elegant twists around her shoulders. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that Min-Jun had insisted on buying her. "My counsel represents me," he'd said. "She needs to look the part." But the real transformation wasn't the clothes or the office. It was the light in her eyes, the confidence in her shoulders, the way she moved through the world like she deserved to take up space again. "You're smiling," Min-Jun said, walking in with 2 cups of tea. He set one on her desk, honey and lemon, exactly how she liked it. He'd noticed. He always noticed. "I'm winning," Nalani replied, gesturing to her computer screen. "Marcus Sterling just walked into our trap." Over the past 4 months, they'd worked together to create something beautiful, a seemingly legitimate business deal between Min-Jun's legitimate real estate development company and an investment firm. The contracts were perfect, clean, professional, profitable for both sides. Sterling's firm had been hired by the investment firm to review the deal. And hidden inside those perfect contracts were 9 nearly invisible clauses, each one a masterpiece of legal manipulation that would slowly transfer control and liability entirely onto the investment firm, and by extension, onto Sterling Harrison and Partners themselves. "Sterling approved the contracts this morning," Nalani continued, pulling up the email. "He didn't catch a single trap. In 8 months, when the first liability trigger hits, the investment firm will sue Sterling Harrison for malpractice. By then, we'll have documentation showing that Sterling deliberately ignored obvious warning signs, the same way he framed me." "And the other victims?" Min-Jun asked, moving to stand beside her desk. "I've been working with them. All 9 women. They're ready to come forward with their stories once Sterling's reputation starts cracking. The NDAs they signed were procured through fraud, unconscionable and unenforceable. I've got the legal precedents ready." Nalani looked up at him. "We're going to destroy them, Min-Jun, legally, completely, and publicly." "You're magnificent," Min-Jun said softly. And the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and powerful all at once, made her breath catch. Something had been building between them these months. It was there in the late nights working together, in the way he brought her tea without asking, and how he canceled a meeting with a weapons supplier because she needed his advice on a contract. It was there in the careful respect he showed her, and how he never made her feel less than despite their vastly different worlds. And it was there in moments like this, when his dark eyes held hers, and she felt something deeper than gratitude or loyalty stirring in her chest. "Min-Jun," she said quietly, "why are you really doing this? This war with Sterling and Harrison, it's cost you time, money, resources. You could have just avoided Choi's deal and moved on." "You know why." He leaned against her desk, close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, smell his sophisticated cologne. "Tell me anyway." "Because I've spent my entire life in a world where power means everything and loyalty means nothing. Where people betray you for money, for position, for fear. And then I met a woman who risked everything twice just to do what was right, who saved me not because she wanted something from me, but because she couldn't stand by and watch injustice happen again." His voice dropped. "You reminded me that honor still exists, Nalani, and I'm not letting anyone hurt you ever again." The air between them crackled with something electric, dangerous, inevitable. "I'm falling for you," Nalani whispered, the truth escaping before she could stop it. "And I know that's complicated and probably foolish, but—"
Min-Jun's hand came up, gentle fingers tracing her jawline. "Complicated? Yes. Foolish? Never. I started falling for you the moment you looked me in the eye and told me my contract was a trap. Every day since, watching you rebuild yourself, watching you fight." He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. "I've never met anyone like you, Nalani, and I'm not letting you go." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question, not a demand. But when she responded, rising from her chair to wrap her arms around Min-Jun's hand came up, gentle fingers tracing her jawline. "Complicated? Yes. Foolish? Never. I started falling for you the moment you looked me in the eye and told me my contract was a trap. Every day since, watching you rebuild yourself, watching you fight." He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. "I've never met anyone like you, Nalani, and I'm not letting you go." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question, not a demand. But when she responded, rising from her chair to wrap her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened into something that felt like promise, like home, like everything she'd thought she'd lost when her world fell apart. "We're going to destroy them together," Min-Jun murmured against her lips, "and then we're going to build something better, something real." "Yes," Nalani breathed. "Together." Love and loyalty, justice and power. Nalani and Min-Jun had found all of it in each other. But the final confrontation with Sterling Harrison and partners was still to come, and when Marcus Sterling discovered who had been behind his carefully constructed downfall, when he realized the unstable junior attorney he'd destroyed was now the brilliant legal mind protecting one of Chicago's most powerful men, the explosion would be spectacular. The ending they'd built together would be perfect, and nothing would ever tear them apart again. 8 months later, Nalani stood beside Min-Jun in a federal courthouse, watching as Marcus Sterling and David Harrison were led away in handcuffs. The malpractice lawsuit had been just the beginning. Once Sterling's reputation started cracking, all 9 women had come forward with their stories. The media had descended like sharks smelling blood. And when the New York State Bar opened an investigation, they'd found a pattern of fraud, forgery, and manipulation spanning 17 years. Sterling Harrison and Partners was finished. The firm had filed for bankruptcy. Both senior partners faced disbarment and criminal charges. Their clients had fled. Their legacy was destroyed. And Nalani had been there for every moment of it. "How do you feel?" Min-Jun asked, his arms solid and warm around her waist. "Like I can finally breathe," Nalani admitted. She'd testified at the bar hearing, faced Sterling across a conference table, and watched him realize exactly who had destroyed him. The look on his face when he'd recognized her, shock, fear, rage, had been sweeter than any revenge she could have imagined. "What now?" Min-Jun asked. Nalani turned to him, this man who'd given her back herself, who'd protected her, believed in her, loved her. "Now we keep building. Your empire needs a brilliant legal counsel, and I need to be the powerful, brilliant woman you always were," Min-Jun finished. "I know, and I'm going to make sure the whole world sees it." 4 weeks later, the Chicago Tribune ran a profile. From maid to legal mastermind, the woman who brought down a corrupt law firm. It told Nalani's story, all of it, the injustice, the survival, the triumph. And it ended with her new position as general counsel for Kang Enterprises, one of Chicago's most powerful real estate development companies. Job offers started pouring in from law firms who wanted her talent, her story, her reputation as the woman who stood up to corruption and won. Nalani turned them all down. She had everything she needed right where she was. "Another late night?" Min-Jun asked, finding her in her office at 9 in the evening, reviewing contracts for a new development deal. "Just finishing up." She saved her work and stood, moving into his embrace like she belonged there, because she did. "I have something for you," Min-Jun said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Nalani's heart stuttered. "Min-Jun, it's not what you think." "Not yet." He opened the box to reveal a key. "This is to the estate. I want you to move in. No more small apartment, no more commuting. I want you here with me, where you're safe and protected and home." Tears pricked her eyes. "That's a big step." "I know, but I've never been more certain of anything." Min-Jun cupped her face in his hands, his dark eyes intense and honest. You're my partner, Nalani, in business, in justice, in life. And I love you. Completely, absolutely, forever. I love you too, she whispered. And yes, yes to all of it. The kiss they shared was different from that first kiss months ago. This one tasted like triumph and promise and a future they'd built together, one where justice wasn't just a dream, where loyalty meant everything, and where a Black woman who'd been told she was nothing proved that she was everything. As they left the office hand in hand, Nalani caught her reflection in the window. She barely recognized herself from the invisible maid who'd walked these halls a year ago. That woman was broken, hiding, afraid. This woman was whole, powerful, loved, free, and she would never be invisible again. Thank you so much for watching this incredible story of justice, love, and redemption. If you enjoyed Nalani and Min-Jun's journey, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Afro-Korean Stories by Andrella, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story about resilience and fighting back. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about this story. What was your favorite moment? Should I create more stories like this? Your support means everything to this channel. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, your story matters, and you are never truly invisible.